I walked into the restaurant and was immediately greeted by the dim lighting and the smell of delicious, savory food. I was excited to try their famous steak, and I took a seat in a quiet corner booth. As I was browsing the menu, I began to notice something strange. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadowy figure standing in the dark corner of the restaurant. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but as I looked closer, I could see the shape of a person. Feeling uneasy, I decided to order quickly and finish my meal as soon as possible. But as I waited for my food, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over to the dark corner again, and this time, I saw the figure was closer. I tried to ignore it and focus on my food, but then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I jumped in my seat and turned around to see one of the waiters standing behind me. He had a strange look on his face, almost as if he was afraid. "Is there something I can help you with?" I asked, trying to sound polite. The waiter shook his head, but then leaned in close to me. "You need to leave," he whispered. "Now." I was confused and a little scared now. "What do you mean? What's going on?" But before the waiter could answer, another figure appeared in the dark corner. This time, it wasn't just a shadow. It was a person, wearing a creepy mask and staring straight at me. I stood up from my seat, ready to run for the door, but then I noticed that all the doors were blocked by more mysterious figures. I was trapped. The waiter grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a door that I hadn't noticed before. "Come with me," he said urgently. "I have a way out." He led me through a maze of dark halls and corridors, and I could hear strange, muffled sounds coming from the other side of the walls. I was more scared than I had ever been in my life, and I wanted to run away from the restaurant as fast as possible. But just as I thought we were going to make it out, we turned a corner, and I saw the masked figure, and several more, standing in front of us, blocking our way. Before I could even scream, they were on top of us. I fought with all my strength, but they were too strong. They dragged me away, and everything went dark. When I finally woke up, I was in a dark, damp room, surrounded by more masked figures. I was their captive, with no way out. As days turned to weeks, I learned more about these people. They were a cult, with twisted beliefs and rituals that made my blood run cold. And I was their next sacrifice. I never did. I had always been a lover of fine dining, eager to try out new restaurants with unique menus and exquisite dishes. So when I heard about a strange new restaurant that had opened up in town, I knew I had to investigate. The restaurant was located in an old abandoned building that had once been a funeral home. As I walked through the door, the strong scent of rot filled my nostrils. The hostess, dressed in a black gown, led me to a dimly lit table in the corner. The decor was macabre, with coffin-shaped chairs and walls adorned with antique death masks and skulls. I tried my best to ignore the uneasy feeling that crept up inside me and ordered my meal from the menu. I was informed that the menu had been inspired by ancient necromancers who believed that by eating the flesh of the dead, they could obtain special powers. I shuddered at the thought, but was eager to see what I would be served. As I waited for my meal, strange sounds echoed through the restaurant. The rustling of whispers and the creaking of doors could be heard from within the walls. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination getting the best of me, but the strange sounds persisted. When my meal arrived, I was met with a strange dish. It looked like a succulent, rare steak, but there was something off about the texture. It was too soft, almost like it was melting in my mouth. I tried to ignore my suspicions and continued with my meal, devouring the strange dish. Suddenly, a scream filled the air, causing the hairs on my arms to rise. The source of the scream was unclear, and the other diners in the room appeared nervous and jittery. I got up from my seat and cautiously made my way around the restaurant, hoping to find the source of the commotion. As I crept down the dark hallway, I found myself face to face with one of the chefs. His face was contorted in a grotesque grin, and he held a pack of meat in his hand. Suddenly, I realized with horror that the meat looked like human flesh. My stomach churned with disgust and fear, and I desperately broke into a run to the exit. But as I reached the door, I found it locked, trapping me inside the restaurant. I was cornered, and the sound of the chef's cackling laughter echoed through the walls. The room grew darker as the lights went out, and I was left in complete darkness. The sound of whispers grew louder and the sound of footsteps drew near. Suddenly, a cold hand grasped my arm, and a voice whispered darkly in my ear, "You'll make a splendid addition to our menu." I screamed and kicked, struggling to break free from the grip. But it was too late. I was dragged away, disappearing into the shadows as the sound of the chef's laughter echoed through the restaurant. I nervously waited outside the door of the new restaurant in town. The reviews said it was the best place to be, but something didn't feel right. Despite my apprehension, something pushed me to open the door and step inside. The smell of food wafted through the air as I looked around. The place was a bit run down, but I figured the savory aroma and excellent food would make up for it. I took a seat at the bar, and the bartender greeted me. His face was friendly, but there was something unsettling behind his eyes. Still, I dismissed it as nerves and decided to order the chef's special. As the bartender brought my food, I felt his unwavering gaze on me. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, but I chose to ignore it yet again. However, each bite of the meal seemed to intensify the sensation of being watched. Suddenly, the lights flickered off. I looked around and saw that the other customers had vanished. Fear took over me, but before I could bolt out the door, I heard a hushed voice behind me. It was the bartender, and he spoke in a solemn tone. "I'm sorry," he said, "but the chef simply demands what is needed for the meal, even if it means taking human lives." My stomach dropped and my throat dried at the realization that I was the main course. The darkness of the restaurant was all-encompassing, and the door seemed miles away. I tried to make a run for it, but my feet wouldn't move. The bartender caught me by the arm, and as I looked into his eyes, I saw the evil that lurked within. My mind raced as to what could happen to me. As I fought against the bartender's grasp, my hand grazed a weapon hidden underneath the bar. In one swift motion, I grabbed it and plunged it through the bartender's chest. With the bartender's death, the lights flickered back on, revealing the true horror.